Hello everyone. Hope you are safe and sound. In the previous session, we learned male reproductive system. In this session, we will study female reproductive system. What are the organs in the female reproductive system? Let us look at it. The female reproductive system consists of a pair of ovary, a pair of oviduct, that is fallopian tubes, a uterus, a vagina, and a cervix. We will study each organ and their functions. Let us begin with ovary. What is the location of ovaries? Ovaries lie inside the abdominal cavity of a woman. Recall that the male testes are located outside the abdominal cavity, whereas here the female ovaries lie inside the abdominal cavity of a woman. What is the function of these ovaries? The function of ovaries is to produce or to form the female germ cells. What are these female germ cells? They are eggs or ova. If it is a cell, one egg, then it is ovum. Singular is ovum, plural is ova. So, the female germ cells, eggs or ova, are formed in the ovaries. Ovaries also produce some sex hormones, which we have already discussed in chapter number 7. What are the sex hormones produced by ovaries? The sex hormones produced by ovaries are estrogen and progesterone. When a girl is born, the ovaries already contain thousands of immature eggs. But when a girl reaches to puberty, then some of these immature eggs starts maturing. And one egg is produced every month by one of the ovaries. Okay, so there are two ovary. Every month one egg is produced by one of the ovaries. And remember that ovaries take turns to produce the egg. So both the ovaries produce egg turn by turn every month. As I said that every month one ovary produce one matured egg. You will be thinking, how much will it be alive? Then you need to note that one matured egg can be alive only for 24 hours, which means it can be alive for a day only. Then the next organ we have is oviduct, that is known as fallopian tube. What happens when the egg is produced by the ovary? Once it is produced, it is carried from the ovary to the uterus through this oviduct or fallopian tube. So what is the function of fallopian tube or oviduct? The function of oviduct is to carry the egg from ovary to the womb through this thin tube, that is fallopian tube. As we can see clearly in the picture that both oviduct, these fallopian tubes, they unite into an elastic bag-like structure which is known as uterus. It is clearly seen that from both the sides the fallopian tube or oviducts meets at one place, and that is an elastic bag-like structure which is known as uterus. Now, if you look at this picture carefully, you will be able to see that these oviducts are not attached to the ovary, right? The only function is what? That to carry the egg which is matured and to transfer it into the uterus or the womb. Then there are cervix and vagina. Through the cervix, uterus opens into tubular structure called vagina. So these are the organs of the female reproductive system. Now let us talk about the fertilization. During the sexual intercourse of a male and a female, the sperms enter through the vaginal passage, which means the sperms transfer from male body to female body through vagina during the intercourse of a male and a female. So the sperms enter through vagina into the female body. Then what happens? They travel upwards. And where do they go? They reach to the oviduct. So from vagina they reach to oviduct, that is fallopian tube, where they will get a matured egg which is formed by the ovaries, because that egg which is prepared by ovary, that is carried in the fallopian tube. So the sperm and ovum will meet in fallopian tube. So how does the sperm travel? Through vagina it reaches to fallopian tube and there it meets to an ovum. And when they meet, there is a fertilization. What is fertilization? It is the fusion of a sperm and an ovum. Right? I am sure in standard 8 you have learned fertilization process, wherein fusion of sperm and an ovum take place. Now you will be thinking that there are many sperms produced by a male. Then how does it happen that only one sperm reaches to the egg? So kindly keep in mind that there are thousands of sperms produced by a male, but most of them will die by passing from the male body to female body. Why? Because of the change of the medium. And then some of the sperms will only reach to the female body, and from that also only one sperm will be able to fuse with an ovum. In short, you need to remember that there is a fusion between only one sperm and only one egg, one ovum, right? So, fusion of one sperm and one ovum, that is known as fertilization, and that cell is known as zygote. Zygote is the fusion of male gamete, that is sperm, and female gamete, that is ovum. Therefore, a zygote, which is a single cell, will be formed by fusion of sperm and ovum, because a sperm will also have nucleus, the ovum will also have nucleus, so there will be formation of a single cell by joining their nucleus, and then there is a single celled zygote. Then gradually the zygote starts dividing into many cells. This we have learnt previously, right? When it starts dividing, it forms many cells. And by dividing, it forms a wall of cells or embryo. How does an embryo forms? By dividing the zygote repeatedly. Many times when the zygote is divided, it forms embryo, which is the early stage of development of a baby inside a mother's womb. Approximately the timing is from the 2nd week to the 8th week of pregnancy. So that is embryo, which is formed by repeated division of a zygote, which is the early stage of development of a child. Then this embryo continues to grow and develop, and it becomes fetus. Now, fetus is the stage of development of a child inside a mother's womb where we can identify the different organs of the baby. And this is the period after the 8th week of pregnancy. So, fetus is the stage where we observe the developed organs of a baby. Previously, we have seen that the mother's body is designed to undertake the development of the child. So, uterus prepares itself every month to receive and nurture the growing embryo. Now let us talk about the function of the uterus. As we know that the fusion of sperm and ovum takes place in the fallopian tube, then it gradually becomes embryo and then it comes into the uterus. So, uterus prepare itself every month to receive and nurture the growing embryo. Once the embryo is prepared, it is in the uterus, and there the development of embryo takes place. So, what is the function of this new uterus? To prepare itself. How the uterus will prepare itself? Let us see. The uterus prepare itself every month to receive embryo. How? By thickening the lining of uterus. Now, the lining of uterus is richly supplied with blood. For what? for nurturing the growing embryo. As we have discussed earlier, that each ovary prepare an matured egg every month, turn by turn. The same way, every month uterus will prepare itself to nurture the embryo. Now, whether the fusion of sperm and ovum has taken place or not, but every month uterus will prepare itself. How? By thickening the walls, the inner lining. You see, the inner lining of the uterus are shown with red color. So it shows that they will be richly supplied with blood, and this way it will thicken it. And for what purpose? To nourish the growing embryo. Now the embryo gets nutrition from the mother's blood with the help of a special tissue which is called as placenta. What is it? Let us see. Placenta is a disc which is a special tissue which is embedded, which means it is implanted in the uterine wall, and it contains villi on the embryo's side of the tissue. On the mother's side are the blood spaces which surrounds the villi. So by this picture we can clearly see it, how the placenta is embedded into the uterine wall, and it provides oxygen and nutrients to the baby. How does it take place? From the mother's blood. So glucose and oxygen will be passed from mother's blood to the embryo. At the same time, this developing embryo will also generate waste products, waste substances. How will they be removed from embryo? So, the waste products will also be removed by transferring them into the mother's blood. And who will transfer it? Placenta. So, the waste substances which are generated by embryo, they are removed by placenta by passing them into the mother's blood. So there are two functions of placenta. One, that it provides oxygen and nutrients to baby. Also, it will help to remove the waste substances by transferring them into the mother's blood. So these are two functions of placenta. The development of the child inside the mother's body take place approximately 9 months. The child is born as a result of rhythmic contractions of the muscles in the uterus. So, here we have learnt the female reproductive system, also the fertilization. Now, what happens if the egg is not fertilized? Which means, what happens when there is no fusion of a sperm and ovum? We have discussed that when there is a fusion of a sperm and an ovum, a zygote is formed. But what happens when there is no fusion? If the egg is not fertilized? As we know that when an ovary produces an egg, it can be alive only for 24 hours, which means if the egg is not fertilized with sperm, then it lives about 1 day only, right? Then what happens? Then it will degenerate itself. The egg, the ovum will degenerate itself, means it will break. So it can live about a day. So if during that 1 day the fusion between sperm and ovum has not taken place, then what happens? It will degenerate itself. But what about the uterus? As we have discussed that when the ovary releases one matured egg, at the same time the uterus prepare itself for receiving the embryo. Then if the egg has not fertilized, what will happen to the uterus? As we know that the uterus prepare itself every month to receive an embryo. How? By thickening the lining of the uterus wall, which are richly supplied by blood. For what? To nourish the embryo. If the egg has not fertilized, there will no zygote. And if zygote is not there, there will be no embryo. If there is no embryo, what is the use of the lining which are thickened of the uterus? Will they be needed? No. Why? Because if there is no embryo formed, who will be nourished by the blood of the walls of the uterus? So there is no need of nourishment, right? And that is why if there is no embryo, the linings which are thickened by the blood are not needed anymore. If there would be embryo, the lining of the uterus which are thickened by the blood will be needed to nourish it. But if it is not there, embryo is not there, then the lining is not needed at all. So what will happen? The lining will slowly break down. And as we know that the lining of the uterus are richly supplied by blood. Now I am saying the lining will slowly break. Then inside it blood is there. So what will happen? It will come out as blood. And from where will it come out? It will come out through the vagina as blood and mucus. And this cycle takes place roughly every month, and that is known as menstruation or menstrual cycle. What is menstruation? It is the process of bleeding through vagina due to the breakage of lining of uterus. So the inner lining of the uterus, which is richly supplied by blood, when it slowly breaks and comes out through vagina as blood and mucus. And as I said, it happens every month and is known as menstruation or menstrual cycle. Again, I am repeating the definition. It is the process of bleeding through vagina due to the breakage of the lining of uterus. Menstrual cycle is also known as periods. So here in these two images, it is clearly shown how periods occur. First, there are the thick lining of uterus every month to receive a fertilized egg. But when there is no fertilized egg, thick lining of uterus breaks down and bleeding occurs. So this is all about today's session.